Greetings, champions! Joel Clark here, publisher of Lone Wolf Fist. Doing layout still currently. If you're watching this, you are probably also alt-tabbing and looking at my current attempt at that. I think it looks really good. You'll notice everything's a little bit smaller, so the margins have a lot more room to breathe. It's very important in print because anything that's too close to the edges can get cut off, and it might not format properly and look really kind of... It'll make bad use of the space of the page, so there'll be like big empty areas in the middle. So I've been learning a lot about how to do this, by the way. This has been a real hurdle, unfortunately. And I hate that the projects got caught up on it, because this is like the last thing we have to do, right? Just do this format, do the very last bit of the writing, and then kick it out the door. And you guys actually get to get your wonderful core book copies. And once I have that, we'll see where the tides of fate take me. It seems to be a really good opportunity, now that Dungeons & Dragons is on fire, to carve out a larger player base. We actually have a pretty good amount of people. I think there's like somewhere between 150 and 300 people that are actively really interested in running and playing this game. That's not a small number. I mean, it's not like Pathfinder numbers, but like that's still not a small number. I'm pretty impressed with that. So, if we can find a way to do a proper offset print run, we'll have the technology for it and the product for it, and it'll all just be about finding a way to do that cost effectively and convincing a distributor to pick it up. Might happen. Who knows? Who knows what the future holds? I don't. But it would be really nice to be able to point to a product that was on DriveThruRPG as like a gold or a platinum bestseller and say, hey, look, why not? Why not put this in your store? Like, clearly it sells. Oh, excuse me. But yeah, so that's encouraging. It's all very encouraging. Looking through the text, you can see that the actual text is smaller. I went down from size 10 to size 9 text, which is a little bit smaller than I wanted, but it's a pretty dense work with a lot of wordiness that now that I'm rereading it, probably could have streamlined pretty considerably. Some parts of the text are beautifully streamlined. All the stuff that I worked on from really early drafts is pretty streamlined. A lot of the stuff that I added recently is a little more bloated. I'm looking at the lore section, and that's going to need some reformatting, folks. It's tragic, but it's true. I might do another whole page per, just so that I have enough room for it to breathe a little bit. Right now it's a touch cramped, and there's no real reason for it to be that way, aside from that I had my idea, and I tried to see if it would work, and I did it all in an initial draft really quickly. So that actually got banged out pretty quick once I actually started writing on it and formatting it. But yeah, it could use a little bit of a revisit. I'm also going through the equipment packages in the character gen section. You'll note those are unedited currently. I just got done with that section. I'm about to do the Kung Fu, and so I thought this would be an opportune time to work on those. And I'm going through them, and a lot of the stuff I reference isn't in the book in there. Like the cool experimental attack bike that's supposed to be like the Kaneda bike. Not there. You can't have a game based on Akira without the Kaneda bike in it. That's not going to work. So I had to dig up the Hot-Blooded Heroes playtest, which thankfully we have a lot of that preserved on Discord, and I found a link to the specs that I sent someone, one of the players in that, and I re-spec'd it with the current rules on how to do that with bikes, because I had the older rules. That was like a playtest version we were doing in Hot-Blooded Heroes, and I re-spec'd it and I put it in there, and I want you to know, if you're watching this, that thanks to you, I was able to very quickly and easily respec Kaneda's bike and put it back in the game. So that's a little thing that's in there. There's a few things like that. Minor animal gods aren't really detailed very well. Also, I really do need to go to the section on the monsters, the whole bestiary, and alphabetize it. I've alphabetized other parts of the game, and they read much better. The keywords come to mind. So there's a bunch of little things I'm taking the opportunity to update, since I'm in the text anyway, and it's because I'm shrinking the text a little bit, and I'm doing that to make certain I fit really close to the page count. It should be pretty similar. It should be in that 300 odd range. But as a result, there are little opportunities to add more writing to a given page here and there. And I really do want to take those to add clarifying text, to add examples, to add little bits that just make the game a little smoother to play. You know, there's a section, a couple more sections now pointing towards how to use the economy and pointing you towards the economy rules that are in the domains chapter, which that's a critical bit of writing that's kind of in a weird part of the text. There were a few issues like that while I was putting together this game where I wasn't really sure where I wanted to put certain concepts. So I just put a couple more fingers pointing to that one. I don't know that I could extricate it from that section. It's pretty buried in there right now. And after 4, how many drafts did that get? I want to say it was 3. After at least 3 drafts of that section, the writing actually does work. Actually, it works really well in there now. It's nowhere near as vague. It's got a much cleaner... It knows a lot more what it's doing, and it's able to communicate that a lot better. I need to... Let me see. There's a couple of character sheets I want to make, too. That's a very labor-intensive process. I'm taking the assets from the old character sheet that Vic made for me for this game, and I'm just moving them around, such as that... it's just to make new sheets, basically. And sometimes that works gangbusters, and a lot of times it's really nitpicky, and you got to move tiny little particle things one by one over to these other little sections. And it's not horrible, it's just time consuming and a little frustrating. And I promised a lot of character sheets. I promised the domain sheet, which I think is a really important one. But I want there to be a follower sheet. I want there to be a power sheet. I want there to be a core character sheet. This is going to wind up being kind of like Exalted 2nd Edition, where you have a lot of sheets for your character, and I don't think that's bad. Having reference material at the game isn't a bad thing. It's bad if the game asks you to fill it all out at character gen. It's not bad if, as you acquire things and the game becomes more complicated, you add additional sheets. Actually, this whole thing put me in mind a lot of Luke Crane's Burning Wheel system. I got the gold edition of that game. Which is this wonderful little Bible-looking thing that's just absolutely stuffed with the most entertaining, weird, and interesting game system I've ever encountered. It's really very cool. If you ever get a chance to pick up Burning Wheel Gold Edition, a high recommendation. I've only tried to play it once, and it was extremely awkward in play. It's a system that demands you engage with its crunch, and every single thing is interpreted in terms of rules and crunch, and it requires lookup, and it requires you to enter into this little bidding war and negotiation with how you use your character sheet with the GM, and there's all these little minor moves and bonuses, and it kind of... The effect of it is interesting, and it's based on a game, what it was, Dogs in the Vineyard, I want to say is that one's called, which is a similar kind of thesis behind it, where you only have a certain amount of dice in your pool to do stuff, but as you raise the stakes, you get more dice, but it makes the scene more deadly and final. So that's a game where the real game you're playing is about figuring out how much risk you want to put into a given goal and how much you want to live with ambiguity and not quite reaching a whole satisfying conclusion immediately to risk less danger. And Burning Wheel does something similar, but it does it in a more layered way. There's a lot more moving parts in Burning Wheel. But a lot of this system owes its thesis to the way Burning Wheel does stuff. Because I read that, I only played it and ran it one time, but I read it a lot. And I really liked that emergent property, where the thing that you're supposed to be doing with the players is engaging them with this mechanical hook, and it's just okay, this is the part where it starts to get interesting. And that informed my thinking on how to put together a game like that. Now, obviously, I've diverged from Luke Crane in a lot of ways, but you'll notice in the text, if you read both of them, he has all these wonderful, fun little asides, or he has this little goblin face yelling at you about what to do and what not to do. And they're extremely personable and entertaining. And you really get this feeling like you know the author from reading that. And I use that writing style too. Honestly, this has just become a review of Burning Wheel Gold. If you get a chance to grab it, pick it up. And also the Burning Wheel community, super, super, super nice people. I joined their forums forever ago, and they were really welcoming and nice. That's nice. It's rare to find a good community of folks around a game, but man, Burning Wheel managed to cultivate it. So good job, Luke. You really impressed me with that one. You didn't need me to tell you that. You're the super successful RPG guy. But in the off chance you ever watch one of my design vlogs, and it happens to be this one out of the dozens that I've put out, if not maybe hundreds, good on you, buddy. For everyone else, I don't know that I recommend playing or trying to play Burning Wheel, but I would certainly recommend owning the book and reading it, especially if you're interested in game design. It definitely gives you a very unique way of approaching tabletop role-playing games. So, anyway, I'm going to get back to the salt mines, folks. I got stuff to do. I got things to write. Other writing. Is there any other writing I got to do? Equipment packages. I'm making certain that those all point to actual things that exist in the game, number one. Number two, I think I'm going to streamline them a little bit. They're a little wonky right now. I don't know how much I want the focus of the game to be about the fact that you rolled a 10 in character generation. I like the idea that it can be, that you can get the experimental attack bike. I think that's really cool. But, like, I don't think the campaign should be about this. Like, if you get, like, one of those world-ending super weapons at character gen, that might be a bit much, you know? I'm not saying may makes the game unplayable or something. Most of those are pretty balanced so that you can get them at any point, and the game is still fun and crunchy and interesting. There's still interesting things that can happen with them. But, like, let me tell you another story before I head off of here. So I actually made a campaign with the premise that it was going to get broken in Adventure 2. Adventure 1 was a very standard dungeon crawl. Totally threw the players off their game. Adventure 2, since the players were successful in the dungeon crawl, they got approached by someone who's like, hey, you guys seem really capable. But they also seemed like patsies because they were low-level nobodies that were like level 2. And he's like, you guys seem really capable. I've got this thing I want you to do. Get in a hot air balloon, go to this ancient mountain temple, and I want you to find these 12 weapons that are there. And you just bring those back to me, and I will give you... And he promised them this absurd, like, 100,000 gold piece reward. He's like, look, I need this to happen quickly and discreetly. It's really dangerous, and this isn't like a guild thing. This is really off the books, but I'll pay well, and, you know, if you are willing to take the risk, there you go. So they bit on that hook really hard. They're like, dude, we can do... They were just basically talking about the stuff they do with the gold. And they go on this dirigible, the only one of its kind in this particular D&D world. And they go over to this mountain, and this mountain, as it turns out, is an ancient and forgotten Olympus-like place where the gods used to dwell. They've abandoned it. They've went to heaven at this point. But they left behind 12 omnipotent super weapons, literally the weapons of the gods. So they're in this gigantic complex, and they're just like, wow, this place seems really massive and important and ancient. And they get the weapons, and they're unguarded. And very quickly they realize that these things are unbelievably powerful. Like, I had a Vorpal sword that if you rolled that 20, cut through whatever building you were in and just sliced it in half, you know? I had, like, epic level, like, top level, I think it was, 9th level spells that you could just summon at will, like, once per day with, like, every one of these. Like, all of these were meant to be, like, usher in the apocalypse super weapons. And they had 12 of them. And so the game became about, okay, this guy that hired us to get these, he knows what they are, and he's got a plan for them. But we have them now. Now what do we do with them? Because they're more valuable than he was going to pay for. These could end the world. And so, and so it became about how do we deal with these indestructible WMDs that we are in sole possession of, being as that we are level 2, have no clout and no money, and we're just walking around with the equivalent of an entire fantasy world's worth of nuclear deterrent. And so, like, and that was the question, like, do we sell these to the gods or the enemies of the gods? Can they even get in touch with us? Do we try to garner favor with X kingdom or Y kingdom? And they found they really had to figure out, like, they really had to play politics to make that work. Because every time they gave one of these things away, they were potentially making, like, a nemesis that was absolutely going to destroy them. Or if they gave them to someone who was too weak to hold the thing, they were effectively handing it to their enemies. So they really had to think consequentially about how they use these weapons. And that was a really cool campaign. By the way, free campaign idea for you. But that's what the campaign was about. It was always meant to be about that. And the consequences of having these things was like, that was the big reveal in session 2. Session 1, normal dungeon crawl. Session 2, you recover 12 WMDs. Really good contrast, you know? And that moment was great. Whenever it really hit the players that, oh, wait, we've got these awesome super weapons. Oh, no. and thinking about all the stuff that could go wrong, all the different ways they could use that to their advantage, was exceptionally cool. And it was a really fun game. And it was one of the ways, I think it was the only 5th edition campaign I ever ran. And I think if I was going to run 5th edition again, I'm not going to. But if I was going to, I would do something similar, just because power level of 5th, even starting level characters are so powerful. It's ridiculous. And you have to treat the world like it's a World of Warcraft world, kind of. And I don't really do that in my style of GMing. Like, I really just kind of put the stat blocks of the monsters down there and let them rampage. And in old school editions, that works really good because, like, most monsters are one-hit die. Most villagers are one-hit die. So it's not like 5 gnolls could take out an entire village by themselves. But in D&D, they kind of could. I mean, there's a lot to be said about the action economy, but, like, if you actually look at the stat blocks of just common folk, and you look at the stat blocks of, like, monsters that are in hundreds or thousands when they show up, like, human beings don't have a chance. Like, and like, to some extent, adventurers buck that curb, but, like, not really. D&D 5th has kind of forgotten its wargame roots. Really, it's not surprising. D&D 3rd forgot its wargaming roots, right? But as a consequence of that, the settings you make in those games are really weird. Like, I knew the consequences of that, making Lone Wolf Fist as ridiculously powerful as I did. But I wanted that. Like, I was inviting characters as WMDs because, like, this is sort of my little love letter to Exalted and games like that. But man, Dungeons and Dragons does not seem to understand what it's doing, which is weird. It's like the biggest RPG, right? And a lot of very smart people work on it and think about it. And I just don't hear that talked about very frequently. This idea that, like, you're not even like Beowulf, you're like Gilgamesh. You know, like, you're like Hercules in D&D nowadays. It's unbelievable the physical feats, like, even non-magical characters can do, you know? And, like, to balance that, they've made the monsters so apocalyptically powerful that, like they challenge those characters, right? It takes more than one fighter to kill, say, a dragon. It takes, like, a whole party. But as a consequence of that, if you look at the stats of things like commoners, a dragon would annihilate anything, just, like, ruin, like, kingdom after kingdom. It's one of the reasons why the whole logistics of heroism things in Adventurer Conqueror King is such a wonderful breath of fresh air, because it wants to build a whole consistent setting with the D&D-averse. And I don't know, there's not a ton of games that do that. They don't seem to have that kind of consequentialist thinking. Anyway. Oh, geez. I went on a little bit this time. I keep recording these and then just quietly tucking them away on my hard drive. This one I'm just going to leave up. I'm a little rambly. My apologies. I'm going to give you this one, and then I'm going to get back to work. Thank you so much for listening to my ramble. I will see you guys next time, hopefully with a couple more chapters done, if not more. See you then.